Hey, 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 party people. How are you guys? And welcome to Tea Talk Thursday. We are getting set up. He was in the midst of working, but he is on his way. So if you have not gotten your cup of tea, get it. Get in here. Get ready. Just want to let you guys know, of course, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we are going to be talking about breast cancer. Well, maybe not so much breast cancer in itself, but really the effects and all of that kind of stuff. So it looks like my guest has arrived. So please hold. Let him come in. Well, hello there, my guest. How are you?
Hi, wifey. How you making out?
Good. Let me silence my phone because I already know that people are going to be messaging me. So let me make sure I put that on silent so not to disturb the conversation. Before we get started, I guess let me introduce myself. So for those of you who do not know, my name is Tamika. I am the mouth of IG at Tamika Talks, and I'm the thought leader at Life and Pumps, where I bring to you all things health, wellness, entertainment, travel, lots of fashion lately, more so because that's what people want to see. But Tea Talk Thursday was literally created to be an organic conversation, a conversation about current events, things that are happening, things that are near and dear to me, as well as, oftentimes you'll come in and you'll see me doing interviews and having guests and things of that nature. So today, my guest is Sy Bryant. He's no stranger here to Tea Talk. He's been here before. And apparently quarantine has kept him busy because he's been just writing all over the place. Well, we're going to discuss his latest book. It is called Co-Survivor. I'll make sure that I post a link into the chat for you guys to see, for those of you who have not had the opportunity to get the book. We're not going to give you all the details because we want it to be a surprise. But we are going to talk about some of the things that are in the book. So while we're getting started, Sy, will you introduce yourself?
So I am Sy Bryant, and as Tamika just highlighted, I have suddenly become an avid writer, writing daily. So I am absolutely, this is going to be an open discussion. I am using writing for my own personal therapy, to be selfish. And then what I started realizing is that other people are going through the similar things and experiences, and maybe it could be helpful to just have an open discussion about it. Tamika and I are very transparent people, probably too much for some people sometimes, but we'll have the open discussion. If you have questions, I love to entertain them, and let's just help each other. What I recognized through this, because when I was getting my thoughts out, and it wasn't intentionally to write a book per se, but just to manage the feeling of Tamika being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013. Yeah, so it was really interesting, right? Because, she digests things really fast and move on. I don't. So while she was moving through the cycle, and it is a normal change cycle, while she was going through it relatively fast, I was still on step one. Does she really have cancer? So she was further ahead talking about it. And it was literally until this year when she's talking about, oh my God, I can't go to Congress this year to advocate. I'm like, well, shit. Like, is it that far going now? And she had moved on to the point of being at Congress advocating. And I'm still like, damn, does she have cancer? And so this was a way to get past that for myself, and also just to share what it's like to be a co-survivor. Because during October, we never talk about the people that are supporting these brave women with that breast cancer diagnosis. And hopefully everyone has someone, but it is those people that see the tears and the scars on an ongoing basis that we just never talk about those people, and how are they managing this new dilemma, this new way of life of just, it's almost like a constant worry. And I'm sure she'll share with you, her and I used to get in arguments about her taking her pills. I am annoying, right? So I will absolutely push and until I see your little mouth moving, until I see her literally put the pill in her mouth and swallow, is when I felt better. So it's just how I react. But again, here for the open discussion. So thank you for having me, Tamika.
Okay,
I love your sign, by the way.
You gave way too much information all at one time. Okay, so
my bad.
Yes, let's dive back. Let's go back. Okay, guys. So he's already given you more than he was supposed to give you, but that's okay. So before we get started, the first thing I also want to remind you guys is today I'm participating in a campaign with How Right Now. And what that campaign is it is realizing that this day and age, we are all stressed out. COVID, figuring out what's happening with the elections, climate change. you name it. I mean, and breast cancer is one of them as well. And so that's why I thought it was so perfect for me to mention this here. So basically what this campaign does is it is encouraging you to take 10 to 15 minutes out of your day for your well-being, self-care, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to post a website below. When we're done here, not now, I want you guys to check it out and get some details, get some information, because a lot of us are not okay. And while we may not be sure we're not okay, we're not verbalizing it. We're not doing anything. We're not taking any steps. For me, when I get in that mood, I need to go outside. I need to just kind of go outside, meditate, recenter myself. So that's kind of where I am. But I'm going to share the link. When we're done, make sure you guys check it out. And then come back and tell me what activities you're going to do, because I feel like this is extremely important. Now, move on to where breast cancer is concerned. Why it's important to me is because I feel like, as he said, I process stuff and I move on quick, and I do. That's just who I am. I can't hold on to stuff. And that's part of the reason why, like, if I'm angry at you, generally I might still be angry at you, and I don't want to say I'm angry, because I kind of let that go. It's an emotion that I don't hold on to. If we're at a place where we're not talking and whatever, I'm okay with it. I just move on. Rarely are you going to have me coming back for us to discuss whatever it was, unless you're like, hey, I want to talk about XYZ. And it's because I move on. Now, one of two things will happen. Either I will remain friends, or we won't. It is what it is. And that's kind of where I am in this. And so with breast cancer, that's exactly how I was. I remember I got the diagnosis. I remember everything happening. And I was like, what? I don't have time for this. It's really what was on my mind. Like, I don't have time for this. And so it was like, okay, we need to get this done and over with. But breast cancer is really not something that you can get done and over with. Like, it lasts forever. Like, every day I have an effect of something from breast cancer. Like, it does not end. Despite the fact that I would love for it to be like, yeah, I'm done with this. It does not. That does not happen. And so what happens is, it's a constant reminder. And so in this whole process, I knew he was writing this book. He told me he was writing the book. The whole process in itself is really like, October comes around. And for most survivors, we really hate October because it is a constant reminder, an outward reminder of what we're dealing with. Everybody wants to buy everything with a pink ribbon on it. Mm-hmm. People want to remind us, and some of us want to forget and we want to move on. Mm-hmm. There are some companies that I highly encourage you to support. We'll talk about that at the end. But the other thing is, I want you to realize that people just often don't want to talk about it. And it's okay. I mean, I have some friends and people that I've met in this journey who have never verbalized what they were going through. There's some people that I know who, through the entire treatment process, didn't tell anybody. And however you deal with it is your thing. When you look at it at the end of the day, though, is that 90% of us have somebody along the road with us. And they don't get a day. They don't get a month. They don't get anything. So I feel like we collectively need to decide on a day. It could be in October, since everybody wants to talk about breast cancer. And we have a co-survivor day. I think we totally should. I think it would be extremely important, because what happens is, and I was thinking about it today, because I'm like, people are probably like, well, there's a caregiver day, and there is a national caregiver day. The difference for me is that a caregiver is often paid. Like, there are caregivers who are not paid. There are people taking care of their parents and taking care of children, whatever the case is, there are caregivers that are not paid. But in a general sense of the word, oftentimes the caregiver is paid. Like, if you watch on the commercials now, they have it where if you are taking care of an elderly relative, you can participate in some program and get paid, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But a co-survivor does not get paid. Meanwhile, they still deal with the same emotional, mental aspect of breast cancer. Now, granted, they're not dealing with the physical pain that you are, but they may have a different physical pain. And I feel like oftentimes we don't address that enough. We don't come back to the co-survivor and talk to the co-survivor until the survivor is either at stage 4 or they have passed. And this is what I've seen throughout my journey. Yeah. I've met so many women, who along the way, and I've met their husbands, and some of them I got cool with their husbands. Like, it's just a matter of what happens. And what I notice is that the husbands are in the mix. And I don't want to just say husbands, because co-survivors aren't just husbands. I feel the same way my parents. My parents were amazing co-survivors. What I see is that oftentimes when we go to these events, it's always the survivors, the survivors, the survivors, the survivors. And even when you're talking about it, but no one talks about that person who was there with you through treatment, who took you to all the appointments, who made sure you had this, who made sure you had that. And so when you decided to write this book, I was really honored. And I was like, wow, this is really great, because I know that generally you don't talk about your feelings like that. And so I know that there are men who struggle. Let me not keep saying men. I know there are co-survivors who struggle. And oftentimes, like I said, people don't talk to them, or the comforting does not go to them until either the survivor is in the end stages or has transitioned. And I see it everywhere. Even so, the other day was Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day. And so on that day, we shared and we shouted out all of the people who are fighting through it and kicking ass. I mean, like, some of these women are totally kicking ass. And then we honored and took a moment of silence for those women who had already, transitioned on. And in every instance, they also talked about, the person that was with them, their co-survivor. But some of these co-survivors I'd never heard of before. Like, I never, and mind you, I knew the survivor. And so I'm like, well, that's strange. And so I think that it's time for us to change that. And so that's why I think it's great that you've written this book. I think it's great that you've already reached out and connected to YSC, Young Survivor Coalition. Young Survivor Coalition does have an arm of their conference that's also geared to co-survivors. It's just not strong, and it's just not getting off the ground. And I think a lot of that is because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about what a co-survivor is and what a co-survivor means. And go ahead.
And even that with YSC, yeah, because I even talk about that in a book. Like, you told me to get in contact with them years ago, and I lied to you and told you I did. I didn't, right? You know when I lie. Yeah. So, but it's every Tuesday at 9:30. I still know. So I know it. I see it. It's on my calendar. I don't go.
Okay.
So a part of it is before, it's all words at first, right? It's all words. I even had one of my fraternity brothers going through a very similar thing. And I told him before things got too different, take time for yourself. I know that now. I know it in hindsight. Like, I did not take enough time for me. And as things were progressing, I felt like I was drowning. I had a very supportive corporation I work with that had no issues with me taking off and working all kind of crazy hours, probably why I still work crazy hours. But going through it, there's times where it's hard to maintain the mask. So in between meetings, I remember giving up, walking out, going outside so I can cry, because you can't cry at work. You cannot, right? We all know that. You can't show emotion at work. I would go for a long ass walk until you couldn't tell the difference between my tears and my sweat. And then I would, come back in. Oh, wow, you look tired. Yeah, it's hot outside. Do you know what I mean? So it was the challenging part was really, it was more so two things: not knowing what was going to happen and what would be the outcome of it. Because when you hear the diagnosis, the first thing that sets in is the fear. It is the fear, right? It's you're going to lose someone. And that's what literally stuck with me for so long. I was worried about losing you that I stopped living. I was so concerned about what was going to happen day to day. The positive part of that was, a lot of shit we used to argue about, it didn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? It's just like,
dang, I should have been buying everything in sight. Why didn't I know this? Dang.
You had a gold card that you were not using, and I'm thankful, God. But yeah, things just didn't matter anymore. Like that. Like, money didn't matter anymore. Time didn't matter anymore. Getting things done didn't matter as much anymore because you were still here. And so I absolutely appreciated you a lot more after the diagnosis, because especially when you started going through chemo, watching that was heart-wrenching. It was. And a couple of times you even literally said, well, you want my mom to come next time? Because you saw the look in my face, like, I wasn't there with you. I was there in that room with you. I drove you. I was sitting down, but I wasn't there. Do you know what I mean? So it is those kind of real discussions that it's hard to love someone unconditionally, but also not be able to protect them. And I see as my role is to protect and provide for you. And I wasn't able to do the protecting part. And it was nothing I could do. And I was challenged trying to accept that. And it was really interesting. Like, some of my eye-opening moments, like my aha moments were and are when these strangers call you just because they got your phone number, and you spend hours explaining what breast cancer is to them from a non-medical perspective. Someone you literally don't even remember the name while you're talking, but you still check on them and text them. And then I understood God's mission of saying, he knew you can endure this. And you are now helping so many more people that you have never would have helped or touched manage this process, because they can see you and see your strength through this and your confidence. So at that point, I started realizing it was getting better, but I still had my fluctuations. I still had times where I wasn't there with you. Yeah, I wasn't there. I knew where we were, but I was like, this is some bullshit. And I'm sorry, kids watching, my kids, they know I curse. They're okay. So that's been the largest challenge, is just trying to go through and accept it. And I realized I've been holding this in for so long. And like one of those YSC moments, it was one of the bike rides that you didn't go to. And we'll get to the bike ride because I love that bike ride, right? But this was like the first time I cried in public. It was a room full of people, and I had Eva next to me, and we were just crying about you, because I never released the fact that you would be okay. I kept thinking the worst, and I was holding myself back, thinking the worst. And so that's the big lesson, is like learning to believe and have faith even when there's no other reason to do that.
Yes. And we do that and not just in breast cancer. Like there are a lot of instances and cases where something is holding us back, no matter what it is, and oftentimes we don't realize what it is. So it's a good thing that you realize that. So let's talk about the book. And so what I need to let everybody know is, initially he sent me the draft, and I read the first paragraph and was like, I'm not reading this shit. All right, children. I was like, how dare he write a what?
You were offended.
I was angry. I was pissed. I was like, I'm not reading this.
You stopped talking to me?
I was like, I'm not reading this. I was like, how dare he? And I need you, and I don't want to tell you why. I need you guys to read the book. And you
stopped talking to me. Let's talk about that. You stopped talking to me.
Because I was angry.
Yeah.
I was angry. And I promise that once you read the book, even if you just read the first couple pages, you're going to text me and be like, yeah, you were right. I would be mad too. Because it was too much. And for me, a lot of the reason why it was too much is that my whole way of dealing with this was, let's get it and get it over with. So in the process of meeting with the doctors, and they talked about treatment, they presented me with a shorter medication route or a heavier dose shortage route. I was like, let's go short. I need to get this over with. And I was very clear. Thanksgiving, I'm gonna be with my family. I was very clear. Like there was nothing she could say. I was very clear. I was very clear on a lot of things. I was clear on a flu shot. There were so many things that I was clear on. And so for me, it was a bump in the road. It really wasn't. I don't know that I internalized it enough to really have a moment where it was like, I have cancer. Like, what in the world? And I do remember the one time when we went to our first appointment at 5 p.m. Okay,
that was it.
I remember that appointment. And I talk to people about this appointment all the time. In every instance when a survivor is reaching out to me and we're talking about emotions and how they're feeling, and I said, I think the day I got the mammogram, I knew there was a lump. I saw it on the screen. When I had to get the biopsy, I went to Miami. I damn near killed myself in Miami. Came home, so I knew. So I felt so internally, I knew what was coming. Like I felt like God was giving me all the signs, and I knew it was coming. Like I remember in Miami on that motorcycle thing where I almost killed myself, and I turned that corner. I said, God, it's either me or the bus, and God was like, nope, you got to stay. I got a purpose for you. So I knew going in that something was happening, and that God was already in the mix. Like, no, let me get your attention because I need you to pay attention and be clear on what's happening. So I am very clear and intent on that. But I also recognize that because of who I am, I was so at a place where I'm like, yeah, no, we got to get this going. I got to get to the next thing. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. So that moment when we got out the car in the garage at Fox Chase, it all hit me.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You can't just move on from this. This is a lifelong journey. Like this does not end until the day you're in the box. And at that moment, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I started crying.
Yeah, I remember.
I
I talked about that too. Yep.
don't think I've cried like that since. Have I?
No, only
Right.
you only cry like that if someone you love dies. That's how severe it was.
Okay. Yes. And I remember, like, I cried, I got it out. And I remember you hugged me, and I was like, all right, let's go. And then
Man up.
right,
Mhm.
right. And I don't know that that's a good way to deal with it or a bad way.
No, it's not. I
I
shouldn't be telling my wife to man up. No, I shouldn't say that. No.
But I tell people, I said, I believe that is how I was able to move on and get stuff done. Like, you know, I realized in that sense that's how I was able to get moving and really not focus on what was happening. And I tell people, you know, because I talk to people all the time, I'm like, part of that for me was why, you know, when I cut my hair, it was like, whatever. I always wanted to see what I would look like with short hair. So I'm going to go and I'm going to play around with my hair. Is because for me, I didn't internalize it that way. I wasn't thinking about the end, what the end could be. Despite the fact of, you know, triple negative is like one of the worst ones you can get. It affects Black women at numerous rates. You know, the rates that Black women are dying, all of that. Like, I did not internalize all of that, you know, despite.
And that's what I was doing. So I was internalizing everything that you were not doing. So it's like while you were the living part, I was trying to manage the damn internet. Like, I had to stop doing internet searches.
Yes.
I had to stop because I was literally on a countdown. And so the survivor rate or recurrence rate is 5 years. So in my mind, it was 5 years of depression. It was 5 years of waiting until we hit January 2018, and so I could feel better.
We hit the hump.
But we had a snag before that date where, you know, and it was because of that snag, that's what stopped me from going forward a lot of times, because I've been spending the years waiting for that date that I can say 5 years is here and I can relax. Because I'm process oriented and data driven, that's what I was holding on to. Mm-hmm. Right. And when we didn't hit it the way we wanted to, it bothered me. Because I remember when we were in the restaurant and you told me, I was literally digging into my leg, you know, have marks on my leg from squeezing because I didn't want to hear what you were saying, but I knew that's why you told me in a public place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not slow, Meek. I know I'm not slow, but you know, you literally told me in a public place because you know I wouldn't maintain my composure. Where if we was home, I'd have been laid out on the floor or something.
Or we'd have had lots of holes in the walls. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We would have had lots of holes in the walls. Absolutely. I'd have been throwing some stuff. But it is trying to manage that frustration of not being able to protect you. That's really what it comes down to. So it's like even me yelling at you to take pills and stuff, you know, because the part that I try to remind people of is your body can always produce cancer once it can do it, right? So you can't stop it from producing cancer. You can reduce it. And the other key part is like just being mindful. Chemotherapy destroys you, makes your teeth brittle, right? So even if you have good teeth and you think you have this pretty smile going through chemo, you'll start getting cavities. You literally got cavities during chemo.
Man,
right? So that's the real part. So the real part of chemo is, you know, I remember the first day, in this part I do talk about in the book, the first day we went to your chemo and she was like, I'll be right back. I'm going to get the red devil. And you were offended. You literally was like, please don't call something you're going to put into me the devil.
Yeah.
I love God.
Yeah.
You can talk about putting God into me, but don't ever talk about putting the devil inside of me. Mm-hmm. And she, from that point on, she felt better. But she kept her word and did not call that thing the devil, because it kills your body. And you had some other complications as a result of it, right? So it's just like chemo is the only therapy that we know now that has the greatest efficacy, but it's not ideal for people. It's not meant for human consumption, but we have no other option.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like we can talk about that. That could be like an 8-hour discussion. Definitely not. I mean, when you think about how they make it, how they put it together, the the things that they're wearing in the process of making it, and then the process of giving it to you, the fact that they have to sit by you because they need to make sure it doesn't burn. Like it's a whole lot. And I am gonna have somebody come on and really talk about that so people can really understand what it's about. Like it is so much deeper than just being like, oh, I'm gonna sit in an infusion room. And I get that people don't understand. And part of the reason why I haven't explained it, I was talking to someone the other day and she had asked me why I hadn't really written a lot of the things that I talk to people about. Is I said, part of it is I don't want it to be real. I said, and I hate that I have to talk to people about it. Like I do. I hate like literally I'm in all these breast cancer groups. I'm in a lot of groups. And then more recently, my sorority, we Zeta Phi Beta, by the way, for those of you who need to know. We have a group where we're supporting one another, and it's a newer group. We kind of just started doing it. And so now, of course, you know, more of my sorority sisters are coming into the group. And so the message is always welcome us to the group. And I'm like, I don't want to welcome them. No, I don't want you to be here. Like, I don't want you to be here. Like, I want to be, I'm done. I've done it for everybody that's connected to me. I don't need anybody else calling me, telling me that they have it. And oftentimes I feel like when I put it to paper, that makes it so much more real. And while I know that other people are still going to get it and it can happen, I just feel like, you know, if I don't write about it, I can stop some of it. I know it's not realistic, but it's just kind of, you know, where I was with it mentally. But, you know, I digress. I am going to have somebody come on because we do need to talk about it. But in the book, let's talk about the book. So part of the reason, you know, basically, of course, why you wrote it is you are a co-survivor. How do you want other co-survivors to read the book?
I think it's around internalizing and you need to talk about it. You do, whether at some point, and this is the hard part. It's like the person I need to talk about it was with you, but you moved on already. Do you know what I mean? Because it was about the relationship you and I have. And this was something so, what's the right word? I don't know. It felt sacred to me because you were about to go through, you know, body augmentation, you know, things that, and it is really interesting. It's like dealing with all of these different things at one time was a lot. And, you know, even so marriage by itself is challenging, right? So then on top of it, you know, okay, I'm gonna look different next week. Okay. No, real different. Like they're going to double mastectomy different. You know, it's like reconstruction different. I know, you know, I'm gonna be bald soon different. So it's a lot that you have to believe in. And I remember one time our pastor said to me, he said, hold on. He said, because he's seen it before and he knows I don't talk. I mean, I share some stuff with him, but I only share when I'm at a breaking point. If I'm not about to break, I will suck it up. I will manage. I will get through it. I may talk to one of my line brothers, but that's about it. I don't need to talk to all of them. You know, one is enough. But I realized when he said that to me, he knew more than I did. He knew how bad it could be. He knew both the positive and negative outcomes of it. And he just told me to hold on. So I held on to a lot of messages Pastor Tyson gave to us through the process. And I have another pastor friend, Pastor Mac, that, you know, I knew in the fraternity, but, you know, they would just call randomly to pray for me. And it was so crazy. Those were the times I needed prayer because it was at the point that I stopped talking or I would regress and I would stop working. And, you know, I could just go to enough meetings, just do enough work to survive in the corporation because you have to produce to stay. I would be doing just enough before someone would just reach out and come to me. So I would say to co-survivor, you need to find someone to talk to. And I did try therapy. I tried our toll-free number at work and all this other stuff. I don't know if I told you this. So Dr. Melissa Cruz State, you know, you had her on before. I even called her a couple of times because I was, you know, she knew I was in distress because I don't call to complain about anything. But she was even trying to give me some guidance about what to do, and it led me to my own work-based mental counselors, that kind of thing. And it wasn't to really bitch and moan per se, but it was this, you need to know that somebody else is there for you and someone else cares for you. And you also need to be able to talk to someone that's not going to bring it back up again. Because a lot of people you know and love, when you share something painful with them, they keep asking you about it. And every time you see them, and it's like, dude, please, like
enough. Yeah.
A lot of people I didn't share with at work because work was my respite. I go to work so I did not have to talk about it. But with my fraternity brothers, my family, hey, how's Tamika? Hey, when's the next treatment date? Hey, I did not want to talk about it, but you need to have that person that you can dump on. And where the counseling profession is really good, they're professional people that receive your shit, right? You can dump on them and let it go. They will absolutely, they're required by law. If you're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, they have to report it. But beyond that, you can tell them everything you want to tell and let it go. And sometimes you need that just to be free of it, because otherwise your own imagination, your brain does not stop working ever. None of us can stop your brain from working, right? Even meditation, your brain is still working, it's still thinking, it's still computing. If that's all you're thinking about is breast cancer, that's all your mind will focus on. You need to get it out and allow yourself to think and do something differently. So as a co-survivor, you need to talk to someone. And if you have people that know it, reading your book will help you just to know, one is that you're not in this alone. It is a painful experience to watch and be with someone that you completely love go through that process where they're putting some chemicals in them to kill off all the cells, including the breast cancer cells, but the new cells will regenerate. That's hard to watch. It's hard to watch someone laying on a bed after surgery, after a 9-10 hour surgery, and you're like, does it really take this long? And you look at the monitors like, you do this, you're a damn surgeon. You can't go no faster than this. Because 2 weeks ago you told me this is your 400th procedure. So by 400, I expect your technique to be pristine and fast. That's not how it goes though, right? So a lot of logic I was losing because I was trying to create a fantasy where it didn't exist. Like you were saying, I don't want cancer to exist anymore, but it is a part of our anatomy. It's not, we don't know exactly what caused it, but some of our bodies just produce cancerous cells. And we just have to be mindful of it.
And not even some of us. I mean, there's a very large majority of us that have cancer cells that just never wake up. They stay dormant. And so, you're going to stay dormant, don't wake up. But yes, I agree that the problem is that we have co-survivors and they feel alone.
Yes.
And oftentimes I feel like, and this is just from what I've observed, is that sometimes they do reach out because, like I said, I've noticed that a lot of the people that I've known that have been stage 4 and once they've transitioned, their husbands or their spouses or their mates or whomever, their co-survivors at the time, has really started interacting with us. And I think it's because that gave them back some normalcy because that's what they had been used to for so long. And oftentimes that they were afraid to move on for fear it was like the person didn't matter. And so what I generally say to people, just in general, is really, you've got to live. You've got to live. I said to the survivor, and I'm saying it to the co-survivors, you've got to live. Like, life is too short. You just don't know. It doesn't have to be cancer that takes you out. It could be anything. I mean, we got over 200,000 people that just died from COVID. So let's put it in perspective for what it is. But where I think it's great that you've written the book is that people can have co-survivors can have Bible per se.
Thank you.
Something where they can realize that what they're feeling is okay. Because I think that, like, in reading the book, and like I said, once I got through the first 2 chapters, I was like, I'm about to go hurt him, I'm about to throw him out the window. I realized that it was about, your feeling and my feelings and how we handled it were totally different. And I can't expect you to handle it how I was handling it. And I can't negate the way that you were feeling and try to belittle it and try to say, well, why are you feeling this way? It's me, the one who's experiencing it and getting in all this, but it's not just you. I mean, cancer is a family affair, unfortunately. Which
how about that? You're right. You're right.
And I don't know if I told you, my mom had written this letter to me when I first, I guess I must have had just finished treatment. And I'm not sure like when she was planning to give it to me or what was happening. I was at her house and it was like, my mom has like all these like journal books, which is
she writes.
So she pulled out this letter and she's like, oh, I meant to give this to you. So I had no idea what it was. So I started reading the letter. I am in tears. No,
you never told me about this.
I'm about to cry just talking about it. It talks about, really like her role and how she was as a co-survivor, you know, like how she came to treatment, you know, how there would be days it was freezing cold. I'm like, Mom, you don't have to come. I look up, she at the hospital. Like, why are you here?
Right. Yeah. Because I was out of the country. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She talked about why she felt like she had to do it, why she was so inspired and how she felt seeing my strength. I'm about to cry talking about it. It was amazing. And so in that moment, that's when you realize, you know, it's not just you. It's all these other people around you that are dealing with it and don't really know how. And that was how she dealt with it. She wrote me a letter. I'm about to cry. She wrote me this beautiful letter. Like, it's so beautiful. So I think it's great that now other co-survivors will have something to go to. And so, like, I've been online and I've looked at some things and I've seen that there are a few other books that have been written for co-survivors and things of that nature. But I'm not sure that they have been written in the sense of more like a novel. So like so after I was angry and I kept reading, I read it more in terms of a novel and not in terms of this is me. And I think that's what made I think that for the co-survivor who is feeling out of sort and not knowing what to do, because like we said, you know, this month is National Breast Cancer Month. And so for any survivor, you know, we're in the midst of it. You see, I'm wearing pink. October is generally the only time you're going to see me in pink because it's what people want. So that's what they're going to get. But so for the co-survivor, they're still reliving all of those moments right along. Sure. And oftentimes, not only are they reliving the moments, they are reliving that anger, that fear, and those thoughts that they never were able to get out. So what do you recommend?
Relieve it. I think it's about they're doing it in silence. So the one part I did like, so what opened me up was, again, the Young Survivor Coalition. We have to figure out a way to put a link to them as well. So I haven't done it last year, but, you know, I did this bike ride 200 miles and that you started doing 200 miles just to raise awareness. The key thing is there is an element of co-survivor embedded in their way of working. So when you go on this ride, that was the first time I was in concert with people that were going through something similar. And when they said, I know what you're going through, I believed it. Or because they do feel the pain. It's not that they only knew I was in pain, they remember that pain. And so on this 3-day ride, the second day you have dinner all together, all the riders, and they always invite one co-survivor to speak about their experiences. That shit is emotional. That shit is emotional, right? Because then you get to hear people that either their loved one is no longer here and they're still riding for them, or they're talking to their spouse in the audience. And you're not crying out of sympathy. You're crying because you know that feeling.
That pain.
And so being around other people that have felt that pain it does make you feel better because you can see how well they're adjusted to it to be able to speak at a podium. Whereas when I was in, like, no, I'm good. I don't got nothing to say. Y'all not about to have me up in here crying. I ain't doing it, right? But they open the mic, you know, if everybody else wants to speak, and it is absolutely a safe environment that they created. And it wasn't until then I felt like I was doing something for breast cancer. Because talking to the women that you're literally writing with survivors. You're literally writing with people just diagnosed, people that have been 10-year, 20-year survivors. And when I started meeting people that have 20 years after diagnosis, then I had something physical to believe in again, because I knew it wasn't terminal. Because what happens in general is you hear someone diagnosed, you lose track of time, all you hear about is them passing away. You don't hear about their fighting. You don't hear about all the life that they lived. And it could have been cancer was a side effect or something else. You don't hear any of that. People allow you to associate, oh, they had breast cancer. That doesn't mean that's why they died. But then they'll talk about, well, how did they live? Who did they help? Because what I've noticed in this journey and riding with these strong women, they help each other constantly.
All day.
Not that I ever want anyone to be in this network of women, but you got to, even on Instagram, I created like a co-survivor account. The amount of women the strength of these women is fucking amazing. And I'm so proud to know some of them, because you feed off of that strength. This is not a doom and gloom club being diagnosed with breast cancer. It is about, okay, I hear what the doctor said, but how are you going to live?
Mm-hmm.
That's the discussion. The discussion is about living. The discussion is not writing a eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people need to hear to move forward, is about, I understand what that person said to you, but this is how we can move forward with this.
Yeah, and part of it is, you know, and what I always try to remind people is we have to focus on the dash, and that's between your birth and your death. You focus on the dash. Don't focus on the end. Don't focus on the beginning. Focus on what's happening in the dash, and that's what you have control over right now. Live life now. But Eva is mentioning that the TDP was one of one of her most vivid memories for her, and I think it is for most people. So for those of you who don't know, YSC is called the Young Survivor Coalition, and immediately right after I was diagnosed, at one of my appointments, I was talking to my oncologist, and she's like, "You know what? You're social. You're up. You're upbeat. You know, I would go into chemo, go into my appointments. I had my high heel shoes on. You know, I was doing it." And she was like, "You know, I think this group would be good for you. They're young people," she says, "and I got the feeling," she says, "I have a feeling that they're lively like you." And so I was like, "All right, what is it?" You know. And so I found them, Young Survivor Coalition. And I remember I attended my first conference in Orlando. And at this time, they were still merged with Living Beyond Breast Cancer. In Orlando, I had just gotten my port out, maybe 2 weeks. So I literally had just really come out of treatment. And I arrived in Orlando. I didn't know anybody that was going. I didn't care. Right. You know, that's kind of who I am. I remember I walked into the hotel and I felt like I was at my sorority convention. And I say that because what happens when you're in a sorority, when people see you wearing your paraphernalia, especially when you're at a conference, you walk in, everybody want to hug you. It's all love. It don't matter. I don't know who you are. You know, we start asking questions. "Oh my God, what's your name?" You know, it was that type of event. And when I tell you the feeling that I got being in there, like I can't describe it. I was like, "Oh my God," it was so euphoric. It was amazing. And so they are the ones who really got me on my journey to, you know, I started connecting with people. Now, of course, the conversations are different. You know, we're all in a room like, "What's your boobs look like? Let me see." The conversations are different. The vendors are definitely different at these type of conferences. But the camaraderie is amazing. And it's something that no matter what's happening, we all stick together. And that's one thing I can say that has been a sense of comfort, especially for a lot of women right now, you know, because we're dealing in tumultuous times. You know, this election has everybody kind of, you know, wacky, is that common denominator is breast cancer. We don't really care. Like, you know, yes, we care about voting. I don't want you all to think that.
You gotta vote. You have to vote.
I want you to vote. But regardless of what your political party is, if you need help, we're going to help you. Right. And so that is pretty much where we come in at. But what I want to see more is that there's more support for the co-survivor, because the reality is, and like you stated, you know, the goal, and, you know, after when I received the diagnosis and they were like, "Oh, well, you know, after 5 years, you're clear." I hate that they tell that lie, because it's a lie. It's not. And I hate that they say that. And the scare I got, because I participated in a clinical trial. So if you're out there and you're a breast cancer survivor or whatever you are, if you're in a doctor's appointment and they ask you to do a clinical trial, please consider it. We'll talk about that later. And that's how I found out that there were dormant cancer cells. And basically the goal was to figure out how to get rid of them so that they never woke up. And so that happened before the 5-year mark. And that's why he's saying, you know, that whole 5 year. And so then at that point, it's like the cycle starts again. So for him, the cycle started again. For me, it didn't. I was like, no. For me, it was still part of the journey. And so much so that when I am talking to people and we're talking about, you know, survivorship and all of that, rarely do I say, "Yeah, you know, I had dormant cells," blah, 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 because I forget. Like that is how that blip of time. I'm like, okay, let's get them done, get them over with, and move on to the next thing. Whereas for you, you were at a moment where you were like, not again. And I think that co-survivors are dealing with that, and don't know how to really deal with it. And especially whereas, and even with you, because you do this and you get on my nerves about it, like if like something is aching or something is going on, instantly you're like, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" I'm like,
they take you to the doctor, ER.
Chill out. And I think that is what co-survivors are going through. And then they're internalizing everything that could be the worst case scenario.
Yes.
And oftentimes they don't come worst case scenario. They stay a worst case scenario. And then they don't know what to do and how to handle it. And I feel like, you know, when I talk to women sometimes and they're telling me how, you know, their spouse has filed for divorce because, you know, right after the diagnosis and they're angry and they're whatever. And I always say, let's talk about it. I said, I'm not saying that you need to call your spouse and tell your spouse to come back to you. That is not what I'm saying. I said, but we got to think about what your spouse was going through. I said, and because in this world, we don't make it easy for people to be weak, to have moments of weakness and not hold it against them. I feel that oftentimes co-survivors are going through things that they won't voice for that reason. And then it's like, well, I got to be strong for you. So if I'm weak, what does that mean? So talk to me about that. Like what should they be doing? Like give people some advice.
Let's start out with it's hard. It's hard, right? And we all are at different levels of maturity about sharing our feelings and our emotions. But what I'm hopeful for is that there's at least one person you can talk to. And sometimes, like if I'm talking to one of my fraternity brothers, I got to say, dog, I got to get this out. I don't want to talk about it ever again. Because you have to tell people, don't bring this back up and don't throw it in my face that I needed to get this out. Or if I may need to call them to cry because of how we are already, crying is not a negative thing. They just know I'm at my tipping point. So it's better that I let tears out than violence out. Because whenever you internalize anything, it will manifest itself in some kind of way. So whether it's you arguing with your spouse now, all of a sudden, like you were in deep love, and now because of a cancer diagnosis, you hate each other. There's something more to that. It's usually because you couldn't talk, like you and I could not talk about it because you were at a different plane of understanding than I was. So there was nothing we had in common related to breast cancer anymore. Right. So this was about how do you manage that anger and pain? You have to find someone to talk to or write it out. So, you know, writing is therapy. So I've learned that over the last, you know, how long we've been locked in. 5 months, right? Writing allows you to manage it because what happens psychologically is as you're holding stuff in, you have to deal with life in general. And life is not easy in general. So if you're already holding something in that's holding you back, and then you allow more stuff to be piled on top of you, you will break at some point. And no matter how strong we claim to be, every one of us have a breaking point. And the best thing you can do is find a way to relieve that pressure so that you do not break. So it is internal. There is no one solution for everyone. I can definitely try to reach back out to the YSC team. Again, they do absolutely have every Tuesday for any co-survivor that wants to join. Being transparent, I haven't joined, but I look at the calendar entry every time, and sometimes it makes me write. But sometimes sometimes on a Tuesday at 9:30, I don't want to talk about it.
I get it.
So you have to find what's comfortable for you, and it doesn't mean getting on a regiment to talk to someone, but it means you have to find someone to talk to. And again, you can chat in this group, or you know, I absolutely always am willing to help people manage different things. I am not a counselor, but I will get you in contact with someone that can help you, right? Because we all need that support. And it's just challenging and I hear what you're saying, where you're saying, you know, you have problems with your relationship and you're not talking about the big elephant in the room and say, cancer does change things for your family. Yeah. It changed things for our family. Like the kids looked at you differently. Nadia did not want to let you out of his sight.
I know.
Liza would sit. That's when she started literally laying next to you every damn day after school. Right. So that's the reality of it. And you have to be willing to adjust. So even as a survivor, I ask for your understanding. As you have this big network of people to build a camaraderie with, I do not.
Right.
It's not that it's not there or not available. It's that collectively we don't have the desire to get together to moan and groan about it. Whereas you have that big supportive environment. Literally what you said at YC, because even at the Tour de Pink rides, it is a hug affair. It's like, hey, how you doing? It's all love the entire time for 3 days straight, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You feel rejuvenated. And sometimes I think a lot of people need that, because that's why we even go to my fraternity and your sorority events. It's like being around people that are like you rebuild you. And it's almost like we do need to, you know, whether it's through YSC or some other forum, create that environment where other people can find a way forward that you're dealing with it. Even if it's some things you've never talked about, different thoughts. So, and I wish I could so bad tell you why she was mad at me, but when you read the book, you'll understand that was my dilemma for a good 5 years. And it's a very vivid dilemma that I was manifesting
Not okay.
to the point that I would avoid going to buildings that were in that dilemma because I didn't want to create any reality around it. So I changed my life unnecessarily to avoid being in certain situations.
So what else will they find in the book?
It's a journey. So I absolutely find a way to talk and describe things from emotional but to hope. So I hope that any book that I write now and in the future will end in some hope and some faith. You need faith to survive this and to be a co-survivor of this. And you need to have hope that, the world is not a doom and gloom environment. But also I have a very strong belief of I'm enduring this for a reason and for a season. So I need to endure it. But through the endurance of this, I am able to help other people because I understand it now. So that when I have fraternity brothers and their wives are diagnosed, I'm on the phone with them. It's not just a text because you need to hear a voice.
Yes.
A text and an email does not convey emotion effectively enough to let someone know that you are there for them. So, you can text for updates and all that stuff, but sometimes you need to pick up an actual phone and dial the numbers, the 10 numbers to reach that person and talk to them. It is through that thing that I hope to leave you with hope and understanding and also a way forward at the end of the book. So I do want people to read the book, to go through that journey. So for the survivors, I want you to read it, to know what their partner, their significant other, their family member, their mother, father went through, because there's this stigma around it. We don't want to talk about what you went through. We just want to talk about you're okay now. That doesn't make it go away. And you talk about October, like it reminds you. So for me, it's around that April time from when you got that diagnosis in 2013, and that last time we were at the cancer center, when you were jumping in the air, like you were happy, but I'm like, shit, is this it? It's like it felt like when you crossed and they're saying you finished, but it's like, no, you ain't getting me. I ain't finished yet. You know what I mean? So it is that feeling like I see you're happy, I see the nurse happy, everyone's smiling, but what's next? And it's hard to digest. What's next does not have to be terminal. It doesn't have to be negative. But that's a step you have to mentally take. And that's where, and if you're struggling, you need to get some mental assistance. And there are mental professionals that can help you manage it, because this is something you have to manage. And we all go through our different cycles of acceptance at different times. Whereas Tamika's is fast. So when I say fast, it's like 10 minutes fast, or it's a day of rest, and then she's passing. Like, we got to talk about it? No, you're not to talk about. And she's dead ass serious. Like, dead ass. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Dead ass. So, but that's what, but you have to understand and internalize for yourself, how long does it take you to accept things that happen in your life in general? If it takes you a year and you're holding a grudge, like I hold grudges, if you hold grudges for years, you need some mental help to manage through this diagnosis. If you can let things go very easily and quickly, you may not need help. You may just need a friend to talk to, and that's okay too. But know who you are and be real about yourself and what you need to survive, because it can lead to divorce. It can lead to other mental health problems.
That's good. And I think that, there are all these cliches about, breast cancer, and, when people ring the bell and how they're feeling, and it's about, I didn't know I was strong until I had to be strong. That's something that you hear all the time. And I tell people, I said, yes, it's a cliche, but it's really real, because really when you're faced with this, you got to start learning more about you. You got to get more in touch with who you are, because that is going to be the only way that you're really going to be able to process it and figure out how to move forward and not be stuck. And oftentimes, I see that so many people are stuck where, their everyday existence is breast cancer. That's not healthy. Like, your everyday existence cannot be that. What was your existence before? What do you want your legacy to be? And I always tell people, don't feel like because You don't want to go to every conference. You don't want to volunteer. You don't want to advocate. You don't want to be, you don't want to wear this. You don't want to wear pink ribbon. You don't want to wear pink. You don't want to talk about breast cancer. That you're wrong. And it's okay. And I feel the same way for the co-survivor. Like, it's okay that you don't have to internalize it all the time, because that should have eat you alive. And it's important that you know who you are and how you do things. So like you said, you know, it happened. It was a blip. I was like, okay, let's keep it moving. Like because I feel like if I'm in that moment too much, then I'm manifesting it. And I tell people all the time, I've never claimed cancer, never. So anybody who calls me and they're like, oh, I got a lump, I said, okay, well, we just want to say that that's just a blip. We're not claiming it as cancer. You know, we're not doing that. You know, if they determine it's cancer, then we're going to take the next steps. We're going to figure it out. I don't want you to ever say I have, ever. Right. Don't own it. Don't own it. And I tell people all the time, put a stamp on it and return it to sender. You don't want it. You don't want it. Go back. And I feel for the co-survivor, because those feelings are going to keep coming up. And know who you are. And if you can't handle it and looking at that person brings all that back, you got to get some help. And if you know that you can process, move on, maybe have a conversation, then you do that. But you got to know what works best for you.
Yeah, so I think the big anchor, right? Because it's also knowing as a co-survivor when to leave the survivor alone. Right. You have to know when to fall back.
That's true.
So when you talk about relationships being damaged, it's because you are on me too damn much. It's enough already, and you're becoming another burden for me. Don't add to the burden. It doesn't mean you always have to help and blah blah blah. You do the right thing, but don't become an added burden. So like when people do transition is when you and I kind of separate a bit, because you go through emotion about it, especially the women that you know. You need a day or two where we are not talking. We don't talk. We manage the kids and we keep moving. And then after a couple of days, you feel better and you can start talking about how they lived versus that they're not here anymore. But your entire community goes through a cycle when that, like you said, the co-survivor goes on their Facebook account and says, "This is John. I just want to let you know he transitioned this morning." It is a wave of the same euphoric emotion in the opposite direction. And you have to realize, as a person that loves the survivor, that's when it becomes real for just a brief second again, because you start to think, how would my husband manage this? How would my kids manage this? It's not that you think about your own demise. You're thinking about how these people can manage without me, because you know how integral you are to the family. Yeah. So that's when you need your space. So I definitely think in general, you have to be mindful as a co-survivor. You need your space like the survivor needs their space. But it's creating this false sense of security that, you know, you are the knight in shining armor without not a damn near medical degree. Make some tea and coffee and sit your ass down. You know what I mean? So you have to be mindful about what you can really contribute. And that's the part you can talk about. So there were sometimes I do have dictatorship in me sometimes, but sometimes I just ask you, what do you need? What do you want me to do? And you will let me know. Sometimes I would kind of dictate, you need this cup of coffee, not cup of tea. You need this cup of tea. You need this plate of food. You're like, I'm not hungry. You need to eat. We go through that cycle, right? So it was a lot of understanding where I had to learn to sit down sometimes and just relax. Yeah. So I am meeting a lot more people because I started writing on my Instagram account now as well, like the Sy Bryant, and I've been posting things every single day, and it is my way to release. Yeah. So I even have a poem every month because this is the first time through writing this, the first time I've been able to release it. So although I write, I don't think I started talking about cancer specifically because I don't want it to be in existence. Just like you said, you manifest. So I made this effort, this book, to write it out so that I don't have to hold it in anymore. Like I wrote these poems every day for October to write it out so I don't have to think about it. And the poems are really interesting because it's from different conversations that you and I have had around like port life and the devil and, knowing when to go to church. There were sometimes you wanted to go to church that I did not want to go, right? But you needed to hear something more emotional, and I could not give you that singing house and that emotion of being in that Black church, because it is empowering.
It is.
Empowering to be there on Sundays sometimes, if nothing else, to build your strength for the next week coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times that I had to, you know, just go with you, to be your designated driver, to get you there, because you needed to be there in that environment. And I always, you know, the one person that always sticks out to me, she passed, I can't remember when she passed away. Shanna, when she passed away, when you were first diagnosed,
Yeah.
and she sent you those gloves.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I thought about her the other day for Metastatic Breast Cancer Day, and I was trying to find a picture and couldn't find one, and didn't want to reach out to her husband, you know, because he is, you know, he's remarried
now. Right.
He's married, and you know, living life. The kids are great, but he will post about her often. Like he right. And it's so, and I realized that it's not that she's forgotten. And you know, I don't want to think that because he got married, he forgot her. I didn't want to reach out to him because I didn't want him to have to relive that.
Right. But I remember when you were diagnosed and she found out, she was calling you.
Nonstop.
And she said, I have to talk to you about this so you know what to expect and what to do.
Yeah. And
I found that she gave me a bit of strength and belief, because she believed just from us. And I did my MBA program with her, right? But she believed that you would be okay.
You did.
Before I could. And I started to latch onto her belief. So I'm so thankful for her.
So am I. And she is part of the reason why I felt so confident, like going out to things or whatever. And even when she was diagnosed again, she sent me a message and she's like, you know, I don't want, you know, I haven't made it public yet. But when it does, you know, I want you to know, you know, I want you to know first. And we cried. And what I will say is I felt like she was prepared for the journey. She's like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And that's the piece you can't buy. And while it's hard to deal with, and, you know, and I prayed for her family, you know, her children were so young, you know, I feel like she gave them what she needed to give them. And, you know, she led her course, and, you know, but it's rough.
So it's those kind of people that have touched your life that I'm thankful for. And that's the part as hard as being a co-star, is that you're in the shadow, because it's that same discomfort. Like you don't want to reach out to somebody and bring up old things and old feelings and stuff like that. It's like, you know, I'll thank them if I see them. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'll reach out and let them know. And so it is truly around trying to build a better community for those that are going through this with their loved ones. Because there's a wealth of knowledge that happens within your community of survivors, but there has to be something to help people going through it with you. Do you have any comments or questions you want to talk about from the chat?
Say that again.
Are there any comments from the chat you want to talk about?
No, I think that was it. Wait, my computer keeps trying to connect to outside. So my network is slowing down. But no, I think that's it. I mean, we are a little over an hour at this point. So I want to thank everybody for coming in, offering your comments. If you are a survivor or you know a co-survivor, I encourage you to reach out to them, especially this month. You know, it's a lot happening, and people aren't often verbalizing how they're feeling, what they're feeling, and sometimes they don't really know. Once again, I'm going to remind you to check out How Right Now. I will post the link so that you guys can check that out. Like I said, it's going to be really good tips to help you kind of navigate a lot of what's going on. I will also post a link to the book. It is listed on my Facebook page, but I will post it again so that you guys can check it out and let us know your thoughts on it. Send Sy a message. Connect with YSC if you have a co-survivor. I think right now that's really the only co-survivor group there is. We are going to declare a National Co-Survivor Day. I just have to sit and figure out what day that's going to be, and what that's going to look like. And I feel like we should have a big, grand thing about it. And we will definitely make sure we reach back out to you guys so that you guys can get the information. I also want to remind you guys that Lagos has released a beautiful, smart caviar watch band in honor of Breast Cancer Month. This month, of course, everybody is putting a pink ribbon on stuff. So be mindful of what you're buying for Pinktober. If you cannot track the funds back to an actual organization that makes sense, don't buy it. Don't spend your money with it. I think that's it. So have a great day, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, if you have not voted, vote. You can vote early. Go do it. Our voices matter. And we need you to vote because, healthcare is a big issue right now on the plate. And I need to make sure that all my survivors are getting what they need to get. So have a great day. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.